caucuses who fight on the issues and elect progressive champions up and down the ballot.
We have to build from the bottom up.
We don't have you as part of the revolution. We can't win elections and we can't create change.
They don't do it alone. They don't do it with billionaires funding their campaigns. They do it with people power.
What's the solution? Our revolution!
We are going to keep knocking on doors. We are going to keep our Congress members accountable and make sure they represent our interests. Yep. We're going to keep holding town halls and summits and meetings, and we're going to keep getting the truth out there.
So we are gathered here today to organize to transform our broken political and justice system. Because when we organize...
Now I'll pass it off to Kristi, Lara.
Thank you, Clayton, for that introduction. I want to thank everyone who's joined the call tonight. This is an important call, not just for Texas, but for the nation and quite possibly the world. Tonight, we'll be joined by an amazing set of activists, progressive leaders, champions, electeds, as well as people running for office right now. So thank you for joining us in our efforts to help change Texas. We have a focus in our revolution, which is a 3-point focus here. And part of what we hope to do is change not just what we aim to do electorally, but also issues-based elections, issues-based campaigns. So you can see the agenda here for the evening. It's a long show. We will keep it as tight as possible and try to make sure that we get to every point that is needed in this very important time. In the next section, I want you guys to know that in our revolution, we use this triangle as the foundation of the work that we aim to do across the nation. At the very foundation of this process is a focus on issues-based campaigns. Many of us know those off the top of our heads, like Medicare for all, a living wage for all, healthcare for all, justice for all. And so we aim to make sure that those issues stay present. They are the strongest voice in electoral activism, and that we bring those to the forefront of all the work that we do. We also intend to help build and encourage electing progressive champions. We call our candidates elected champions because they promise to ensure that their voice, both as a candidate and if they're elected into office, to raise the issues at the foundation of the triangle as our voice and part of their power structure once they are not just running, but once they win. And finally, this is our second Our Revolution Caucus meeting, our first digital caucus meeting in the Texas Democratic Party. And we aim to change the party so that it represents working families, not just the corporate 1%, those that are wealthy, those that are well-connected. We aim to represent the voices of working people within the Democratic Party to make sure that their voices are heard and that we stand on those issues. And much of that work will be presented tonight with our committee reports for those Bernie delegates who are in the system right now representing progressive issues at every corner and at every turn. Up next, I'd like to introduce and take a moment. Our Revolution Texas has the privilege tonight of having two amazing champions for progressive issues on the call. The first, many of you know, our dearly loved and one of our founding presidents of Our Revolution, Senator Nina Turner. She's joining us tonight to help discuss some of the many issues we're facing across the nation regarding not just criminal justice reform, the Justice for All movement, police brutality, police violence, but also joining us to make sure that our voice as progressives is on point at this issue, at this pivotal point in time regarding ending police brutality in this nation. We have the privilege of having Lee Merritt. Lee Merritt is a civil rights activist. He's a lawyer. He represents families who have been affected and victims who have been harmed by the system, especially victims, many in North Texas, who have been murdered by police or been affected by police brutality in this state. And he also affects people across the nation, including the recent Aubrey Ahmaud case, as well as George Floyd. So we thank Lee and we thank Nina for being here during this time in history. And Senator Turner, I'll turn to you. Can you tell us what your experience has been during this time regarding the civil unrest around police violence in this nation? Senator Turner, you're muted. I'm going to work to unmute you.
Oh, Lord, I'm just talking. Kristi, hey, how's everybody?
Thank you.
Goodness. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to join Our Revolution Texas. When Jim Hightower calls, I always try to answer that call. I love Texas. I miss you guys so very much. This is an important conversation. I'm honored to have it not only with you all, but to be virtually side by side with Mr. Merritt, who's out there on the front lines as a civil rights attorney. You know, I'm feeling really heavy, really full as a Black woman in America, just to be totally clear. This is not the first time that I felt heavy and full and anxiety and hurt and pain and just a maelstrom of emotions, because to be Black in America is to have those emotions all the time. Not only am I a Black woman in America, Black husband, Black son, my son is in law enforcement. My husband is a retired police officer. So being someone that is in this fight, I see it on both sides. And so a mother's pain and anxiety every single night, knowing that my son is out there to protect and serve, that there are some in law enforcement who take that oath very seriously and understand why they are there. This is a systemic cancer that we must fix in this country, and it's not up to Black folks to fix it. It's up to America to fix it. You know, I saw a meme, Kristi, the other day, and it read, America is lucky that Black people only want equality and not revenge. Hello, somebody. This is a 400-year proposition. This is not just about Mr. Floyd or Miss Taylor or Miss Sandra Bland or Tamir Rice, Emmett Till, who did not have the benefit of a smartphone, and on and on and on. This really is about the compounding confluence of anti-Blackness and racism in this country. So to say that I'm heavy, that I have moments where I can't even think clearly is really an understatement. But what keeps me going is the whole notion that if a committed, conscious-minded people continue to be on the move, there's nothing that we cannot do. James Baldwin has been heavy on my mind. Those of you who have joined us on this call, if you have not read his book, The Fire, next time, baby, read that book. It was a letter to his nephew about this country. And just a few excerpts I just want to share with you before we get to Mr. Merritt. And he said that they have destroyed and are destroying hundreds of thousands of lives and do not know it and do not want to know it. James Baldwin is talking about the power structure, the people in power, white America. Truth, he is speaking here. He goes on to say that this innocent country set you down in a ghetto in which, in fact, it intended that you should perish. Think about that. Wrap your minds around that. From the first African to this country to their descendants, from Jim Crow to Black codes, to redlining, to the social, economic, political, racial, and environmental inequalities that Black people face every single day. And I want you to wrap your minds around this, OR Texas, that we're talking about racism on one side, but there's another layer to racism, anti-Blackness on the other. James Baldwin goes on to say that you were born where you were born and face the future that you face because you were Black and no other reason. This is a painful and pivotal moment in our country's history, and we got two choices. Either do something to change it so we're not back at this moment again. Hello, the riots in 1960. Hello, what happened in 1992 in LA. Or we will find ourselves right back here once everything has been rebuilt and people have long forgotten about what triggered us this one more time. I hope it's just this one more time, which is the lynching of Mr. George Floyd. Kristi, I'm gonna stop right there. I could keep on going on this, but hearts are heavy, people are hurting, and folks need to try to understand that hurt, and it's multidimensional. It's not just this one thing, it's everything.
It is, Senator Turner, and we thank you as always for your inspirational words. And we see now that people are, it's a little more than words this time, right? We've been asking nicely for a long time. And Lee, I know you've been a part of that as an activist and organizer, and also a representative for these families, not just here in North Texas, but across the nation. You know, I live here in North Texas with you, so I am very much aware of the amazing work you've done to represent these families. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like for you in this moment, as well as what this moment means to Texas? Because I think in Texas, we don't deal with police brutality time and time again. You know, it happens here in Texas, and progressives, how progressives could move to answer that call to action.
First, thank you all for having me. I can't imagine a more appropriate place to bring this message. There are people fighting out in the streets, there are people fighting in the courtrooms, but here where we talk about how to organize people to take back control of our government, how do we use the mechanisms of government to actually effectuate change in society and address the long-term ills that exist. As Senator Turner, I really appreciate your words from James Baldwin. Those are words that I committed myself to memory as a kid, as a young student in South Central LA, watching my neighborhood burn around me during the Los Angeles riots following not only the beating of Mr. Rodney King, but the murder of a young girl named Natasha Harlan. And it was the compound of those things that finally allowed people to wake up. And so, Kristi, when you ask me how I feel, I honestly feel like it's like societies begin to wake up to the reality that a lot of families that I represent have experienced daily. So, you know, the crisis that we're in is nothing new to the family of a Tatiana Jefferson or Jordan Edwards or Pamela Turner or Darius Tarver, and the list we discussed before before we went live, that there's a list that exists. And the list is almost so disheartening that you're afraid to share it because the names seem endless. The scary thing really is that outside of where these things have happened, there's very few names that we bother to remember anymore because they're so numerous, and they will be replaced by another one tomorrow. And as I began to work with Ahmaud Arbery's case, it was really a horrific case of racism, but not only racism, but brutality and the system. The legal apparatus of South Georgia ratifying the behavior of racists, of former law enforcement officers in the murder of Ahmaud. But the scariest part was that no one cared, that Ahmaud Arbery's name wasn't known until a video happened to be leaked by one of the racists himself who assaulted and murdered Ahmaud. And so I have a strange bit of satisfaction that society is finally coming to grips with the crisis that we're in. And that crisis is nowhere more pronounced than in Texas. Because as Senator Turner pointed out, the issue that we're dealing with is the criminalization of Blackness itself. America has criminalized its Black population. And that's not any more true anywhere than Texas, that holds the largest prison population in the country, that spends $35 billion a year on mass incarceration, and the kind of civil rights violations that take place in the black box that is our prison system would shock even the conscience of the nation that is coming to grips with the violence that's pouring into the streets. And so as we deal with the issue of police brutality, finally as a nation, we have to go to the issue of mass incarceration, and where I would call Texas the capital of the country. And because this country leads the world in incarceration, and not only the world, this country leads the world history in mass incarceration. There's been no country in the history of civilization that has incarcerated more of its population, mostly Black and Latino. There's a time of reckoning that we must come to, but we know that it's not rooted in the brother George Floyd, but in deeper issues of racism and dehumanization that exists in our system that we have come to accept. We've come to accept that 1 out of 3 Black men will go to jail at some point in their lifetime. We've come to accept that we will rake in a new toll of 1,100 state-sanctioned murders a year in this country, more than any other modern nation, more than the next 5 nations combined. And this is not a reality that families can live with. This is not a reality that I'm tempted to say that the Black community could stand, but the truth is that any freedom-loving American could stand. And so, as scary and as uncertain as this time is, as the nation is cast into an uproar about the murder, the most recent murder of Mr. Floyd, I am hopeful that we finally begin to address this crisis in brutality, this crisis in incarceration, this crisis in dehumanization of the Black population, and maybe, really for the first time in American history, we will confront the system of racialized control that has always existed in this nation, set it aside finally, and move forward as one nation together.
I think hearing your words, Lee, and the work that you do, many of you know that we organize this Texas Democratic Party caucus, Our Revolution at the Caucus. For a while, we've been organizing. Lee, for those of you that don't know on the call, was a Texas Bernie co-chair. And so he's been part of the progressive movement and spreading that progressive message of not just ending mass incarceration, but ending mass criminalization. And this police brutality, police violence situation is systematic. Lee and Nina, can you guys give our leadership on this call, the organizers, these activists, people that are making the movement happen in their communities, what guidance can you give them to do specifically as a call to action in Texas?
Well, as we all know, the murder of George Floyd and the outcry from that is really not about George Floyd. It doesn't make a lot of sense to demand justice for George Floyd in Denton, Texas, without demanding justice for Darius Tarver. It doesn't make a lot of sense for you to gather and rally in Fort Worth, Texas, and demand justice for George Floyd and not demand justice for Tatiana Jefferson or the 10 people in the 6-month period that were murdered by Fort Worth Police Department prior to her death. The answer, as you all know, is always grassroots organizing. The answer is always local. And so we look at what's happening on a national level, and we have to reflect on how those same patterns are being repeated locally. Police brutality is just a symptom of our system of mass incarceration. We've empowered our police force to over-police Black and brown communities. We have never ended the war on drugs. In fact, we have ramped up the war on drugs even as one of the main incarcerators, marijuana, has become legal in many states. We have continued to criminalize and incarcerate individuals based on the use of marijuana. That is something that the state of Texas can stop doing today. That can happen county by county. It can happen statewide. We must end the war on drugs. We must decriminalize poverty on a local level. That means intervening at a local level when it comes to the crisis and incarceration in this nation. It means intervening in issues of mental health, where families who are suffering mental health crisis and call for a wellness check, which is at this point in Texas, 50% of the calls that we receive to my office concerning brutality is a family that called law enforcement because they had no one else to call when their family was suffering from a mental health crisis, or a family member was suffering from a mental health crisis. And instead of getting care and help, they received brutality and often death. We saw that in the case of Pamela Turner in Houston, who was a schizophrenic, a bipolar schizophrenic, or suffered from bipolar schizophrenia. and was walking about her community clean when she was harassed by a police officer who accosted her, who attempted to take her into custody for a reason that has never been explained. And eventually, when she resisted, she was killed, although she was unarmed, and she was a frail grandmother who believed herself to be pregnant. Those kind of atrocities really should have set us off in our communities a long time ago. I return to Houston tomorrow to participate in a march in the name of George Floyd, but we will be pushing the case of Pamela Turner to the forefront of that conversation. And that's the solution. When we talk about what are we demanding when we're out in the streets, it cannot just be justice for George Floyd. I'm in Minnesota now, and in the city of Minneapolis should be demanding justice for George Floyd, but we must be on a local level demanding change in our systems that reflect it. I guarantee you that no matter where you are, and I listened to Clayton as he read off all of the regions in Texas, and each one of those regions in Texas, my office either represents a client or has received a phone call about brutality in those regions. Learn about those cases, connect with those families, advocate on a local level for local change. And we must reject a culture where the use of force against unarmed individuals, against 6 individuals, is simply accepted. We must reject a culture where law enforcement officers can take the life of an unarmed citizen and return to their job or transfer from department to department. We can address these issues locally. There must also be federal solutions, and we must support policies and agendas and candidates who speak towards this crisis in America. As we deal with this, we have to look at the broader terms nationally in terms of our demands and what we can do locally to ensure justice for families at a local level.
Well, thank you, Lee, for everything you do. Senator, do you want to give us some last words before we move on to the next portion of activism that people can take part in?
Yeah, thank you, Kristi, so much. And I agree with everything that Mr. Merritt had to say about what we can do. We also can demand citizen review boards on local levels. There's something for everybody to put their hand to. Do what we can where we are with what we have. So we must demand from city halls all the way up to this Congress that there's an activation of our power. Our activist power is one thing, but we have elected folks to office and they hold our power, our money. So we need to demand a social contract in this country and to change the realities into a different reality, a reimagining, if you will. Dr. Eddie Gall always talks about reimagining. So citizen police review boards are important. There needs to be laws passed that make consequences for people who weaponize the police. I'm talking about that woman in the park who knew good and daggone well they're calling the police on Christian Cooper. See, we got to march for him too, because thank God he didn't lose his life. She knew exactly what she was doing. And those of you who saw the video, you know she knows exactly what she was doing. The emphasis on it's a Black man or African-American. I forgot whether she said African-American or Black, but she made it very clear and pretended to be in duress. So weaponizing the police against a Black person or any other person should be against the law. There needs to be some consequences for that. So we're gonna push for that as well. And then you cannot serve that which you do not love, folks. It's just as simple as that. So from law enforcement, I saw some folks on the chat saying that police are just a microcosm. Yes, they are, because guess what? We are all socialized in the same nation that treats the zeitgeist of this nation, as much as we don't want to admit it. The zeitgeist of this nation is that Black people are the other, that we are sinful by our birth into this nation because we are Black. Going back to what James Baldwin said, you are where you are. What is happening to you is happening to you because you are Black. Hello, somebody, and for no other reason. And so we need to come to grips with that. We need to also have a truth and reconciliation. Although South Africa is nowhere where it should be when it comes to the Black Africans in that nation, at least they had a truth and reconciliation phase in that nation. We have yet to do that in the United States of America. You got one of Trump's leading people, and I forget this man's name, who just was interviewed saying the systemic racism does not exist. Hello, somebody. This is bigger than Donald Trump, but I just had to throw that out there because you must be insane, out of your mind, not living on planet Earth to fix your mouth to say that systemic racism does not exist. I also need my sisters and brothers in Texas to understand this, that racism is one thing that people of color endure. Anti-Blackness is a whole nother level. Hello, somebody. There are only two groups in this country, Africans and then their descendants and our Native American sisters and brothers. Hello, somebody. And so anybody can be anti-Black. So we need allies from all walks of life, and we need co-conspirators. I want folks to understand that. And then I also want to draw people's attention, Chris, as I wrap this thing up, to the Kerner report. I want folks to go and read this. I want you to educate yourself about these things. This ain't new. This is not new. But when riots broke out in the 60s, President Lyndon B. Johnson commissioned put together a commission. It was called the Kerner Commission. And they were asked to study the civil unrest. And basically summing up, what they came up with is that in this country, we're moving towards two societies, one Black, one white, separate and unequal. And I say to you, from that moment to this moment, everything written in that report could have been written today. And there is something wrong with that. So we need to take the words of our brother Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that we want to see in the world. We must take our blinders off and see very clearly that it was on purpose that African Americans are enduring this kind of injustice, generation after generation, decade after decade. And at some point, it must stop. At some point, I want some Black generation, whether I'm here to see it or not to have to endure this same kind of struggle. Hello, somebody. Just one generation, please. And it is going to take the concerted efforts of all of us to plant trees whose shade we may never enjoy. I don't know who said that. That's not a Turnerism, so I don't want to take credit for that. But are we ready, sisters and brothers in Texas, to plant trees whose shade we may never enjoy? We must be outraged at all times, not just when a camera is rolling and has captured the sin and the hate and the vilification that this nation has for Black people. As I said, Emmett Till didn't have a smartphone. Hello, somebody. And but for Aubrey, for the pure unadulterated hubris and gall of that man with those other men who shot him down, if it wasn't for him recording it, nobody would have believed it, as Attorney Merritt said. If it wasn't for civilians walking down the street and seeing that officer put his full weight and body on Mr. Floyd's neck, nobody would have believed it. So I want you to think about this. Think about the fact that Black folks always need somebody or something to verify our humanity. Hello, somebody. To give witness to our humanity. Hello, somebody. Because it's always assumed that we are lying. Because we have never been treated as a collective as if we were worthy to have self-determination and liberty of mind, body, spirit, and experience in the United States of America. America wouldn't be what it is today without the blood, sweat, tears, forced labor of African American people. And we are, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, damn it, we sick and tired of being sick and tired. I just need one generation to be able to give a different testimony. Hello, somebody. And so we need all of you on the front lines. And it's not just about being out there protesting, the real work, a different kind of work. Because I'm not gonna lie, protest is a beautiful thing. But when the protesting is done, we need real actionable things that are going to help us make that transition. Hello, somebody. Texas, I love you. Y'all got to have me back. We gonna do this thing. Now, everybody needs to commit. I know that Kristi and others, Commissioner Hightower is gonna come on here. We need folks to be activated, whether the damn cameras are rolling or not, because this is a lifelong proposition here. So we are fighting for liberty and justice for all, not sometimes, but all the time. Thank you, darling.
Senator Turner, you are always welcome in Texas. Thank you so much for being on the call tonight. I'm sure many of you are moved by both the calls to action from Lee and the calls to action from Senator Turner. We simply must be the generation that changes this once and for all. And I hope this is our moment in history, our moment in time. We have just over 200, we have over 200 people on the call right now. But what we want you guys to know is we have over 200 champions, because you guys are the ones who are going to help us make the change, not just inside the party, but outside the party and into electoral activism, into electoral organizing, whether that be for candidates that you help work for, campaigns you help organize, delegates you help win seats, committees you help lead. We will talk about that later in the call. But thank you both for your calls to action to Texas and around the world and around the nation. And from that, I'm going to lead into our next call of action. Linda, can you tell us about what people can do to help us organize here in Texas and across the nation?
I'm so happy to do that. And thank you, Senator Turner and Lee Merritt, for those just incredible, rousing words. I'm Linda Phoenix, and I'm with Our Revolution Harris County, but I'm also a phone bank captain with Our Revolution. That's right, I'm on the phone a lot. And what we just heard from Senator Turner and Lee Merritt is that we know this in our hearts, but we must have justice for all. And if you care about justice for all, and I know that you do, we need you to take action. Senator Turner is just talking about an actionable step. So we've endorsed several progressive county attorneys who can create real systemic change, but that's only going to happen if we get out the progressive vote. It's getting out the vote, and I'm asking you to take a step and join me, Clayton, Kristi, and the hundreds of volunteers that phone bank every Thursday. We do this every Thursday to educate Texas progressives about justice for all and to get them out to vote. It's just so important. And without further ado, I want to pass the hat back to Clayton and Kristi so we can start our Progressive Populism in Texas panel.
Thank you so much, Linda. And y'all, it is very important that we really reach out to Texas progressives, because we have to, there's a lot of things that we have to educate them on, and just making sure that people know about elections. But hey, we'll talk about that in a second. Because right now it is my honor to introduce our panel. Now, these panel are really wonderful folks. They were the Bernie 2020 Texas co-chairs. So we have, of course, the one and only Jim Hightower. Jim Hightower is the former Texas Agriculture Commissioner and is a founding board member of Our Revolution. We have a personal friend of mine, Farrukh Shamsi. He was a 2016 Bernie co-chair as well for Texas, as well as for 2020. Hey, when you got something good, you got to keep it, right? And he was also the former vice chair of the Texas Democratic Party. We have another really good friend of mine, Dr. Joca Marquez. She is a former city councilwoman from San Marcos. She has a doctorate in school improvement from Texas State University, and she works for NASA. How cool is that? And unfortunately, I don't believe Greg Casar has been able to join us today, but of course we also have Lee Merritt. Lee, if you're still with us, Lee needs no further introduction. So let's go ahead and just get this panel started. My very first question is going to be for Commissioner Hightower. So Commissioner Hightower, given that Texas has been governed by what we can colloquially call our three stooges for the last few decades, Texas is commonly viewed as a conservative state. Do you agree with this, or do you believe that the true heart of Texas has elements of progressive populism?
It has more than elements of progressive populism. The heart of Texas politics has been from the very start a people-oriented, people-first, anti-corporate, anti-banker organization pushing for workaday people to have the power in this state. The original Texas Constitution outlawed banks. Think about that. They were so rebellious. You could not form a bank. It took a 2/3 vote of the state legislature to form a corporation, of both houses of the legislature to do that. So we have this deep populist streak that still exists in our state, and a streak that is based not just on politics, but on the cultural aspects of our society and on the social aspects, particularly including race. The populist movement has been labeled as some sort of a racist institution by ignorant people, ignorant scholars who didn't actually look at the organization. In fact, populism has been biracial, multiracial from the very start, not to the extent it should be, but at least it was there. And it was the first to advocate voting rights for women, the first to advocate rights for working men and women, minimum wage laws and our wages and things like that, to stand up for the regular folks against the power establishment. And here we are again, these many years so eloquently put by Lee Merritt and Senator Turner, my longtime pal, and co-conspirator and all things progressive. Here we are again with a crisis of anger and consternation. People are angry, and it's not just Black people who are angry. That is the significant thing that is not being reported enough about the demonstrations that are taking place these days. And it is a multiracial, a multi-generational outpouring of anger at what the power establishment is doing to us. And now, of course, we have the authorities, we have the power establishment, the media even, coming out and saying that order must be restored, that we must have respect for the system, and people need to quiet down. Well, Mr. Floyd's murder and his on-camera lynching and his last plaintive cry for mama, that came about because we have been too quiet. We have been too passive. We have been too obedient to the powers that be. And so I'm just going to leave you with this thought. Well, first, our Revolution Texas, our slogan is, we're not here to protest the government. We are here to become the government. We are here to elect good people to office, to restore the balance of power for the people against the moneyed interests. But I want to just reiterate something that's important for all of us to consider. And that is, in this time of convulsion in our state and in our country, that the reality that we're confronted with is not just to deal tinkering with the system. The system itself is corrupt, and it has to be changed. And you don't do that by accident. You do that by concerted action, such as organizing, harmonizing, mobilizing of all of us to stand together. Let's remember that the opposite of courage is not cowardice. The opposite of courage is conformity. We can't just go with the flow. We, the people, have got to stand up for ourselves and all of us, and for America itself.
Very well put. And thank you so much, Commissioner Jem Hightower. Now, my next question is going to be for Dr. Joca Marquez. So, Joca, you've been very instrumental with getting local Green New Deal legislation passed. Could you tell us a little bit about why local activism is so important, even with these big issues? I mean, the Green New Deal is such a huge issue, but while even locally, there's a lot that we can do. And if you could also talk about how, we kind of, one of the big reasons we really have to stop the climate crisis is because of how it's going to hurt a lot of people and how people of color will likely be disadvantaged the most.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much, Our Revolution, for having me, for the invitation. First and foremost, Senator Turner, wow, that was incredibly amazing. That was powerful. I felt God speaking through you. So thank you so much for that. Sometimes we need that motivation. Sometimes we just need that reminder to be on fire the way we used to be. So thank you so much, Senator Turner, for that. Of course, with me, it's always been about undoing systems of oppression. that have been created, like Senator Turner says. And this didn't begin yesterday or the day before, or even 50 years ago. This has always been going on for 500 years, since the inception of this country. And really, I always talk about this because if we don't undo these systems, we cannot move forward, we cannot progress as a nation. Genocide of my indigenous ancestors, really displacement of our people, colonization, systemic racism, misogyny, xenophobia, homophobia, everything that needs to be undone. Actually, we, the Latino population, our ethnic group as we know it, we are all a product of the rape of indigenous women, of course, by European colonizers. So my goal in life as a policymaker, as a scientist, and while in office, I'm actually still in office because of COVID-19, I'm still part of the San Marcos City Council. And we haven't had an election yet, but my goal has always been to be unafraid to speak up, to be unafraid to do things against the status quo. And I find that we can be very vocal on social media when we are candidates, but once we're elected, it's a very nuanced place to be. Once we're elected, people are afraid to lose their donors, and people are afraid to upset their constituents. And we as elected leaders, like you say, Clayton, change happens at the local level. So what are we doing at the local level to change this? Whether it's a Green New Deal policy, whether it's the cite and release policy that we just implemented as of yesterday, it went into effect in our city. We are the first city in the nation in San Marcos to implement a cite and release ordinance. And this is such a big victory. And that we are trying to undo this prison to deportation pipeline, reduce the number of incarcerated individuals in our county. And we've also expanded our anti-discrimination policy to include gender identity. So what we do at the local level, again, affects us more than what we do at the state or at the national level as policymakers. And right now, this is not the time to be silent. This is not the time to be with the status quo. We can march and we can shout and we can do many things, but I believe that the first revolution is internal. If we don't look at ourselves and we don't say, how am I biased? How am I racist? What is it that I'm doing? Are my kids going to school in a certain district? Who am I hiring? If we don't look at our own practices and undo our own systems of oppression and our own biases and our own internal racism, we cannot begin to undo what Senator Turner was talking about. And as far as the Green New Deal in my city, we're still working on it. With COVID-19, things have slowed down a bit, but it is something that we plan to do, again, with cite and release, expanding our anti-discrimination policies in San Marcos.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Marquez. Next is a very good friend of mine, Farrukh. Now, Farrukh, you've been very well attached to Bernie for the last times, and I can definitely say that Bernie has inspired a great many of us. He's really inspired a movement, and that's a movement that we're all part of today. In your opinion, in today's environment, what can progressives do to continue forth? How can we continue building this movement? Farrukh, you might be muted.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. What has happened in today's environment? Obviously, it's all around us. I mean, today, President Trump declared that the US Army is going to be stepping in. I mean, he's acting like a dictator. And frankly speaking, we must join our Black friends and neighbors and help them out at this time. We have to be together. Progressives have to be together in this with them. They cannot do this alone, and they should not do this alone. This atrocity, it goes across all racial boundaries. It doesn't matter if you're brown, black, white, it does not matter. We're all in this together because it could be any one of us. For example, wouldn't it be terrible? We've already seen incidents happen with Latinos as well. So it's not just the Black community, but unfortunately, it's been primarily the Black community. So we as progressives have to join together with them and form our own quote unquote army of people who will peacefully and strongly, vociferously put forth our views and viewpoints, and we will change the landscape. We will vote. We're going to make sure it's not just us, but everybody together is going to vote, and we're going to vote with one voice because we'll know who we're supposed to vote for. And that's been the whole problem. Our vote is being split all over the place, but not anymore. Not after what just happened this past few days. We have to come together, and we will come together because it's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. When Bernie Sanders was asked, and everybody's seen the interview by Barbara Walters, what's one word that you would want to be remembered for? The word was compassion. That is it, compassion. If you don't have compassion for what's going on right now, then that's fine. Step aside, but let the rest of us who do have compassion get in there and do something, mobilize, and help take care of the situation. We can't do it alone, but we can do it together. We can do it peacefully, and we can work with some of those police people, as we've seen on the news. Some of them are willing to march with us. That's great. Let's bring them on together and make them part of our army as well. Thank you so much, Clayton.
Thank you so much, Farrukh, and thank you to all of our Bernie co-chairs who were able to join us, so to Commissioner Hightower, Farrukh, Joca, and without further ado, going to quickly pass it back to Kristi to really re-emphasize our mission so we can lead into our next. So as we can see, this is our mission, and we already kind of gone over this. We're about electing progressive champions, about building a progressive party, and winning progressive issues. And I mean, we've really been doing that. So I mean, we've been really all over their state. Because we can't just win the Texas Triangle. We can't just win the cities. We have to be all throughout. We have to be in West Texas, Rio Grande Valley, the border counties. We have to be in Gulf Coast, Coastal Bend, Central Texas, North Texas, East Texas. We have to be everywhere. And we really do need y'all's help in helping us get everywhere, because we are putting on virtual meetings. Kristi and I and our other organizers have been all throughout the state. And you can see where we've all been. So you could just go to ourrevolutiontx.com/membership, become a member. And our next speaker is someone who I have definitely seen around the state quite often. His name is Gilberto Hinojosa. Gilberto, Mr. Chairman, are you with us?
I am.
Perfect.
I am. In more ways than one.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Chairman. Now, we've seen each other around the state more than our fair share, from East Texas, Central Texas onward. Can you tell me what insights do you have about the importance of us organizing all throughout Texas? How important is that for us to truly win Texas and to turn Texas blue?
You got cut out a little bit in the last comment, but I'm assuming the question was, how important is it for to turn Texas blue? I mean, it literally means not just the survival of our democracy, but of the world. This is a fight that I think that the right wing of this Republican Party has been itching for a long time. They believe that they've reached the point where they can take control of all the institutions in this country and impose their own view of what they believe government to be. This is the most dangerous, the most precarious position that America has been in as a democracy for 100 years. It's a time when this state that historically has been a conservative state, a state that has been run by Republicans, and before that by conservative Democrats, this is a state now that holds in its hands the ability to turn things around. With the 38 electoral votes that we hold, with the second largest congressional delegation that we have, with the second largest number of federal judges that we have in this state, and with the number of people that we have that is a majority minority population in this state. We're close to 60% of the population of this state is Hispanic, African American, or Asian American. We have the ability, along with our progressive Anglo citizens of this state, to win elections in this state, pick up the 38 electoral votes, pick up enough congressional seats where the majority of Congress persons in this state are Democrats, pick up at least this election cycle a United States Senator, pick up 4 seats in the Texas Supreme Court, and district attorneys and sheriffs all across the state of Texas. All this can happen, not just because we're hoping it to happen. All this can happen not just because of the numbers that we have. All this can happen because I have never seen Texas Democrats more mobilized, more angry, more motivated than what we have today. This is something that has been growing over the last 4 years to the point where we're almost there. The polling that we're seeing all across this state, whether it's for the 38 votes for the presidency of the United States in this state, for the Congress, for the Texas House, that we're only 9 seats away from flipping, and the congressional seats, even the Supreme Court shows us either in a statistical tie with Republicans or in some places ahead. But it's not going to happen just by itself. And I just want to make that point, especially in talking to the Our Revolution movement in this state. It's going to happen only if we work harder than we've ever worked before, organized harder than we've ever organized before, and essentially put more effort into this election than we ever thought was humanly possible. And the enthusiasm and the organization that Our Revolution brings to the table is something that I can tell you right now, without it, we would not be able to win this state. I'm convinced that this movement that was started by Our Revolution, Bernie, Jim Hightower, and all the rest of the leaders in Our Revolution is what's going to help us push this state over the edge to the democratic state that it needs to be. If Texas turns blue, everything just happens in this country. We don't need to worry about the Rust Belt states. We don't need to worry about Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Michigan. We have enough electoral votes with Texas, California, New York, and some of the other largest states to be able to win the presidency. We're able to put in additional 7 or 8 congressional seats, a U.S. senator. With the U.S. senator alone, we're able to pick up the United States Senate and ensure that we have appointments to the Supreme Court. So this is critical. Mm-hmm. Last few weeks, with respect to the virus, has been traumatic with our country. But what happened with George Floyd was something that shocked us all, and something that we didn't believe was possible to the extent so openly that it occurred when he was murdered. The movement and the anger that you see out there is not anything that is surprising. What is surprising is the way Mr. Trump and the right-wing Republican Party is reacting to it. They're wanting to fight. They're wanting an insurrection that they can bring the troops out. And so, this is something that has put us in a crisis that there's only one way to defeat it, and that's by organizing for this election. Elections have consequences. When you win elections, you elect district attorneys, like what we did in Fort Bend County, and elected a Democratic African-American district attorney who worked quickly to decriminalize a lot of the conduct that had been considered criminal by the Republican district attorney there before, who made sure that people were not being arrested and prosecuted for small possession of marijuana, who used the justice system in a way that was working for the people and not against the people. You need to elect sheriffs and who are going to be ensuring that when people are arrested, they're not arrested on bogus charges and brought into a county jail and just lost in the system, that are going to ensure that you're not filling people jails up with people who are charged with property offenses and not violent offenses. These are all things that happen when you win elections, you know. I don't know if you saw the front page of the newspaper in Houston where the chief of police of Houston was marching with the Black Lives Matter organizers in Houston. That's what happens when you win elections. And so, you know, all I can tell you is I am very afraid what's going to happen in November if we don't realize, all of us, that we have to work together, we have to unite together, we have to give everything in our heart and soul to win this election. Republicans are not going to stop in trying to put up roadblocks to prevent us from doing this. You saw what they've been doing with vote by mail, and you've seen what they've done with voter ID. You've seen what they've done with redistricting. You've seen what they've done with making it difficult for people to be able to register. They understand that if people vote, they lose. And so we have to overcome those obstacles on top of everything else to ensure that we can get our folks to go out and vote, elect the right people to all these offices, ensure that what happened to George Floyd never happens in the state of Texas, and that we fight against the criminalization of people of color in the state. That is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chairman Hinojosa. You bring us some really excellent points of why we need to get people out to vote. So bringing up, I would like to pass the hat to Mia, who's going to be introducing our next very special guest about how we mobilize to Latinx youth vote. Mia, are you there?
I am. What an amazing panel. Hi, y'all. I'm Mia Kroll. I'm a state Bernie delegate and local leader with Our Revolution Rio Grande Valley, #Puro956. Our next speaker is someone who I'm personally very excited to introduce. Cristina Tzintzun Ramirez is a founder of Jolt Texas and Workers Event Project and a former U.S. Senate candidate and is a rising star in progressive politics. Welcome, Cristina, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Mia, and good to be here with everyone. And I want to tell everyone, I hope you're all doing as well as you can in this moment where there is so much hurt, pain, and righteous anger being seen and brought to the forefront for our nation to face from the Black community. But I think it's also in this moment that we can reflect upon why our work at Our Revolution is so critical, that our work in for justice and our work for deep structural change is so necessary. And it's also really exciting. You know, I was one of the folks that helped found and set up Our Revolution in Texas, along with Jim Hightower and many other people on this call. But when we started, we were just a small group. And now we should be all incredibly proud because we are the largest caucus meeting at the Texas Democratic Party, y'all. And our power as progressives is going to continue to grow because the remaking of the Democratic Party, Texas is ground zero for that. Because on every single major issue that we care about and are struggling with as a country, whether it's climate change, healthcare, income inequality, immigration, or police brutality, we are the epicenter of those issues. And because we are the epicenter of those battles, that means we are the epicenter of change. So in Texas, as we look about remaking our state, we have to look at the power of young voters, voters of color, Black and brown communities, and especially Latino voters. You know, I know folks know I ran for Senate. There were some folks in Washington and the Democratic Party establishment that were not very excited about a progressive Latina running in Texas. But I think we sent a message that people know that Texas is going to flip and that much of that hinges on the power of Black and brown voters, and that you can't have it both ways. You can't want our votes, but not our voices. Because here in Texas, we have the largest Black population of any state in the country. Half of the people turning 18 are Latino in Texas. And in Travis County, white progressives were critical, both in 2016 and in 2020 in delivering this county for Bernie Sanders. You know, I know as a Latina, I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. And that so many young Latinos did, not because he was asking us to go vote to elect him, but he asked us to go vote to elect a movement. That he asked us to go vote to elect a vision of transformative change for our country. And that is why we went and voted in droves. And to continue to build off of how Texas is changing, we have to, as a movement in our revolution, align ourselves with communities of color, of young people, and build a coalition that's white, brown, and Black, because we together are the super majority of the Texas Democratic Party. And we hold the power in our hands to transform not just the politics of our state, but of the entire country. And so I know we live in a moment where our communities are under assault and under attack, but people are assaulting and attacking us because they fear our collective power. And they should, because we know at our revolution, we're not just about changing of the guard or flipping the state. We're about transformative, real change to address the real pain that our communities feel in this state and across the country. So I want folks to know that they can continue to build off of this power. There was a 250% increase in the Latino vote in 2018. We don't know all the full numbers yet for 2020, but the numbers are going to be astronomical. And we have a generation we can capture. So let's align our revolution with organizations like Move Texas, like Texas Freedom Network, like Deeds Not Words, like Texas and Jolt, to really continue to build this movement. And the last thing I want to let folks know, that I know that we're told as progressives oftentimes that our proposals are too ambitious and that we shouldn't ask for so much. But I think as Texans that we should respond that in Texas, we know that we can dream big because we are big, and that we are clear that we are living in a moment where everything that seems impossible today could become possible tomorrow. So I'm really excited to keep organizing with you all and continue to build the power and voices to build the multiracial coalition, not just to defeat the politics of hate, but to build a new Texas and a new America. And that it starts so much with so many of the activists and organizers that are on this call across this state. So thanks for letting me be part of it and making my journey as a progressive and someone like me to have a voice, and for all of us to have a collective voice together.
Thanks so much, Cristina. I mean, turning out at the next vote is actually crucial. So thank you so much. We at Our Revolution encourage all of our members and supporters to join myself, Clayton, Kristi, Linda, and others to take the pledge. I promise to help educate Texas progressives about important issues, inform them about local elections, and to tell them about OR endorsed candidates in their area. Prometo ayudar y educar a los progresivos de Texas tocante preguntas importantes, informarles de las elecciones locales y tocante a la organización Nuestra Revolución y los candidatos ya aprobados en su área.
Awesome. So you guys can see, thank you, Mia, for that, that the poll has been launched to ask if you will take action to educate our voters, turn out the vote. As many of you know, early voting begins June 29th for our primary runoff elections. Many of our candidates are running against establishment candidates, meaning you have the choice between a true progressive and someone who is only kind of sorta, right? So we encourage you not just to vote, but to organize the vote. Call your friends, call your family, and more importantly, call the ORTX list. It's the Bernie list. So we need to turn out our own voters. We know there might be less than a 2% voter turnout for the July 14th primary runoff election. So your work is pivotal. Every phone call you make, every letter you send, every postcard you send out will make a difference in this election in these important COVID times. Mia, thank you for that. Please take that poll. It's on your screen now. If you don't see the poll, if you're calling in by phone, you can go to our website, ourrevolutiontx.com, and sign up OurRevolutionTX /volunteer to fill out a volunteer form. And Clayton, I'm here looking at the deck. I know we're running short on time. Can you go into the next call to action for us?
We have all of our regions. So everyone who's RSVP'd, you will automatically be added to our regions. So
we have committee reports to do. Clayton, is that correct?
yes.
So joining us on committee reports, you can see these are all the pictures, not all, but some of the pictures from across Texas and some of the work that needs to be done to make sure that the progressive voice is the strongest, not just in our communities, but in the party. And joining us, I'm so excited to let you know, Scott Fulis is joining us. He's running for Drainage Commissioner in Houston. You can find more information about his race on ourrevolutiontx.com/2020 endorsed candidates, as well as Zach Webb. Can you guys let us know what's going on in committee reports, Scott and Zach?
Absolutely, Kristi. It makes me very happy to be able to bring you some really good news today. So I hope you guys are hanging in there. This is going to be fun. I had the honor and privilege of serving on both the temporary platform subcommittee as well as the permanent platform committee. We had a bunch of great Bernie delegates on there with me. We had a bunch of Biden delegates who sometimes agree with us and sometimes didn't. The one point, even though I had a lot of respect for some of those guys, but the one point they kept hitting us with was, please don't use those words. Please don't say Medicare for all. Please don't say Green New Deal. Please don't say abolish ICE, because we're going to get hammered on that. The Republicans are just going to beat us up. Fortunately, our delegation understood that you should never, ever let the opposing party write your platform. That is ridiculous. That means we lose before we even begin. So I want to tell you what we got in this document, and please read it as soon as the final comes out. At least look it over, because it's wonderful. Eliminate student debt and free tuition are in our platform. A moratorium on charter schools is in our platform. Legalizing marijuana and releasing anyone convicted of only that crime is in our platform. The Healthy Texas Act, which is Medicare for all for Texas, is in our platform. An assault weapon ban is in our platform. Withdrawing from Yemen is in our platform. The Green New Deal is in our platform. Abolishing ICE is in our platform. Can you believe that, y'all? An improved, comprehensive criminal justice reform platform, including holding police and prosecutors accountable for their abuses, is in our platform. So, I mean, that is just the highlights. There's a ton of other good stuff in there. The other thing I wanted to say was that most of our Bernie delegation, except me, obviously, were young people. The future is ours, y'all. The Democratic Party is going to be a progressive party. We are on our way. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Scott. That's incredible. So yeah, thanks to all of you activists who signed up and campaigned for convention committees. Bernie's vision was very well represented on what are viewed as the three most impactful committees, winning the majority of platform seats, the plurality of resolutions, and bringing a powerful block to the Rules Committee. This representation was only made possible by our members' mobilization and organizing abilities. So I think every single one of you deserves to feel proud of this. And Scott told you about the impact the Bernie-crats made on the platform committee. And on rules, we also made advances such as increasing transparency in the democratic process. But there are still more reforms needed to the TDP's rules and platform, and much of that work will be done over the next 2 years by the SDEC and at the 2022 state convention. So I wanted to take a quick moment to stress that for our members and caucus attendees. If you are a state delegate, in your email now is a ballot to elect your 2 SDEC representatives from your Senate district. This ballot is due by 5 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday. So please reach out to the other Bernie Pledge delegates in your district, make some new friends, and work together to elect candidates who will be fierce fighters for our progressive values over the next 2 years. And also, before you know it, we'll have another state convention, 2022, and that will present new challenges to organizing, being a non-presidential year. So our progressive movement needs all of you to, again, run to be district delegates and state delegates, run for committees, sign up with Our Revolution Texas to stay organized and continue to be involved and active in your local communities and local politics. So yeah, great work, revolutionaries. Once again, Bernie Kratz have proven that we can accomplish dang near anything by working together, and I'm thrilled to think of what's to come as we continue to make our voices heard. Thanks, everyone.
Well, that brings, that makes me so happy to hear, Zach, and that is our favorite chant that we say, whose revolution? It's our revolution, right? So we got to be active, stay active, take control, make sure that our voice is the strongest voice. And I think we just started that and are going to continue that now into the future. Carla, do you want to give us a quick notifications on action points that our activists and organizers can take on the call?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristi, and thank you, Scott and Zach. Those are some amazing additions to our platform. Super excited. So hello, revolutionaries. My name is Carla Palomares. I'm a national Bernie delegate for Texas SD10. Woo! Leader with Our Revolution Tarrant County. Before we transition to our live candidate Q&A, I want to take a brief second to encourage each and every one of you online to join your local Our Revolution regions if you haven't already. Because in order for us to win nationally, we really have to win locally. Our revolution is creating a virtual infrastructure to mobilize each of our 12 regions so we can create local powerhouses everywhere. So we encourage each of y'all to become actively involved in our respective regions. Our regions are Red River, Panhandle, Big Country, El Paso, woo, San Antonio, the RGB, Rio Grande Valley, East Texas, North Texas, woo, Central Texas, Southeast Texas, Gulf Coast, and Coastal Bend. So we will connect with everybody who did RSVP for the caucus. We'll get you in touch with your respective regions. So thank you to everybody who did RSVP. If you didn't happen to RSVP, please go to Our Revolution Texas. That's ourrevolutiontx.com/events. And then we'd like to see you and we can touch base with you there. So becoming a full member of our movement is extremely important. When I say full member, we're dependent on small recurring donations from everyday folks because we aren't supported by the Jeff Bezos of the world. Rather, we're supported and thanks to memberships of folks like Kristi, Clayton, Linda, Mia, Scott, Zach, myself, and a whole lot of others. Woo! So for $27 a month, our memberships empower us to be able to host these statewide calls, to be able to host these virtual meetings all across the state and all across the regions that we had recently in Houston, Tyler, and Beaumont, as well as our future meetings that you guys will be seeing out in West Texas, DFW, and RGB. So again, for those $27 a month membership dues, that allows us to send, as an example, upwards to 800 text messages to reach out and help build our movement and make it even stronger. So again, we really hope that you will consider donating, becoming an active member. Our average donation right now is $11, and we certainly appreciate any donation that we get. So we really hope that you guys will join us today. Thanks so much, Kristi.
Thanks, Carla. We're going to transition to the next section of the call. And I want to thank everyone that stayed with us. This is part of organizing a state as large as ours, right? Just the list, hearing you say the list, Carla. You know, Clayton, I don't know if Clayton's unmuted there, but his favorite thing to say is that Texas is 13 states masquerading as one, right? So we're up to the challenge, right, progressives? We're going to organize the state. We're going to organize the progressive voice. Clayton, are you able to introduce the next section for us?
Sure thing. So we are leading into our electing progressive champion sections, and I'm so excited that we're going to have Mitzi Rusk and Roy Woody, two really close personal friends of mine, to host this call. So Mitzi, Roy, are y'all there?
We are just so excited to be in this group today. And my gosh, I'm just bursting at the seams with all that information about the work that Scott Foilis did in committee. And that is what our revolution is here for. And thank you. We're going to move right into Q&A. So I want to know if I've got Mike Siegel present. Is he with us?
I believe Mike had to jump off for a little bit, but he will be jumping back on.
Okay, that's okay. I'm just going to jump to the next one that I was going to ask, and let's see if Lorenzo Sanchez is here. Is he with us from North Texas?
I'm here.
That's great, Lorenzo. Thank you for being here. It's fabulous to see you. Lorenzo, I know that you're up there running for House District 67 in Collin County, and I'd like for you to just quickly tell us what you've already learned in your race about why our revolution is important.
It's important because we need real change. I mean, it needs to be from the bottom up, like everyone was saying earlier, from our city council, our school boards, all the way up. We have so much power at a local level if we could organize together. And that's what I'm learning. A lot of the times when my opponent throws things at me, like electability, it's because I'm brown or because I'm standing up for things that might be controversial, but I believe that I need to stand up for our planet. I believe that I need to stand up for women's reproductive rights. I believe that we need to stand up for Black lives. And that's what my community expects from me. So that's the kind of servant I want to be. And hopefully I'll be able to pull it off for the progressive movement here in North Texas, because it's going to shape what Texas politics looks like in this area for decades to come. So I am really looking forward to making sure that I can continue to reach out to voters in whatever way possible. Right now, COVID has made that very difficult, but we're finding ways to continue to do that. And I want to let everyone know that, you know, electability tends to be a thing that they use against us, and they tend to use it against women candidates and minority candidates, but we can also need to be at the table when these huge decisions are being made to make sure that they have a lasting impact and they represent our community.
Well, thank you for telling us that. You know, you as a candidate, you are the heart and soul of our revolution as we go across Texas, educating voters and educating them on why the issues are important. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass the hat to Roy Woody, if he's out there, and let him see if Jennifer Cantu is here with us.
How's it going? Jennifer, are you on? Hey, Jennifer.
If she might not be with us, we could go on to maybe Michelle Palmer.
Michelle Palmer, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well.
All right. So you are running for the State Board of Education, place 6.
Correct.
Correct. All right. And so how are things with your race? What are you hoping to do as a, on the State Board of Education?
Well, I'm a teacher, an active teacher, and there are no active teachers on the State Board of Education. The person that currently holds the position never attended a public school, didn't send her own kids to public school, and homeschools her own children. So we definitely need educators in there, because the State Board of Education is the laughingstock of the entire country. In the education world, they choose to include a lot of non-factual information in our curriculum, and then of course choose textbooks that affect the rest of the country, and they include that non-factual information. So we need to get somebody in there that can tamp down and on the propaganda that's filling up our textbooks and curriculum, so that our students can understand how to tell a fact from fiction, and then use that to get the jobs that our future economy will require.
All righty. And then, so my wife's on the school board, so we went ahead and asked the superintendent one question, and she said one of the main things coming out of Texas right now is that the current curriculum, while it does, do language arts, it doesn't really push for students to be proficient in reading. What do you think about that, and how would you make things, better for having, students to actually learn how to read?
Well, that's a great question. I have been an elementary school reading and writing teacher at one point in the past. And the important thing when you're in elementary is not trying to push your own taste in books on the kids. And that happens a lot in elementary. You're trying to create this fire of passion for reading when you're teaching elementary. And we need to put the ability to do that into the curriculum and take away the test that makes that so difficult.
All right. And then one more question for you. So COVID-19 has caused, students to move their learning and their testing online, but sometimes there's a disparity due to technology. How would you address that? How would you like to see that addressed?
That's a huge issue. One of the things that we could do is to make certain that our more rural areas of the state have access to high-speed internet, because they don't. And that's a major problem. I teach in a district that has 40% of students that do not have Wi-Fi. So it is very difficult for them to be able to connect and do the assignments that they're supposed to be working on. We are probably going to have at least partial online learning continuing next year because of what's going on with COVID. And so we have to find ways to deal with that. One of the ways that I have seen several districts do it is to take their school buses and put Wi-Fi on their school buses and park it during the school day in neighborhoods that have the lowest amount of people with Wi-Fi. So that has helped some. And I know that a lot of districts, though certainly not all, have laptops for most families, if not every student. And so that's another thing. It's going to cost a lot of money to make sure that every district can get these devices out to every student that needs one. And in addition, find other ways than just the few hotspots they're able to afford and the buses with Wi-Fi to make certain that internet access is available for every student. It's not going to solve all problems because we still have a lot of students, especially our special education students, where they have a desperate need for that in-person contact, but it would solve some of the problems that we currently have.
All righty. Thank you. And we got to move this on to Mitzi and Lashadian. Thank you so much. And Michelle.
Okay, I'm here to, what I'm going to say is I'm looking for Jose Garza, and I think he's ready to come forward with a question.
Mitzi, if we could really quick in the service of time, if we could have Lashadian speak really quick. He has another call he has to hop on.
I'd love it. I'm ready for him. I'm ready.
Clayton, if you could unmute your mic for us and tell us a little bit about your Black State of Emergency and your work there in the City Council in McKinney.
Yes, Lashada, I just saw that you were out there live in Frisco, Texas. And so, yes, we want to hear from you on what's going on, and thank you.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Lashadian Shimwell. I'm the McKinney City Council for District 1. I was elected in 2017 as the second African American to hold a position in McKinney, Texas. Don't know if you know much about McKinney, Texas. It's very red, very conservative, and I'm very not. And so thank you to Our Revolution, one of their first endorsements, and we're kicking tail and doing some great work and trying to bring light the issues and the platform of Our Revolution, transformative justice. Back in October, after the death of Tatiana Jefferson, after the death of Botham Jean, I dared to issue a proclamation titled the Black State of Emergency. And what I wanted to do was highlight these injustices and really call for some legislative changes, highlighting and changing the excessive force used by police across the state of Texas. And when I did that, the city of McKinney called for my recall, but we are fighting them. They say Texas is big and everything is bigger in Texas. Well, justice should be bigger in Texas. And so I'm giving them hell, and thank you to our revolution for that. Right now, with everything going on across the country, this is our leverage. This is our collateral. We're always talking about the justice or else. No justice, no peace. You'll hear that chant time and time again. This is the no peace part of it. And it's up to us, the lawmakers, to use our collective power now to push forth those laws that we need. This is our bargaining chip to move forth that transformative justice that we've been talking about. And so we need to capitalize on that moment. If there's anything anything specific that you needed me to touch on, I'm not sure, and I wasn't prepared for anything specific.
Lashadion, I want you to touch on why your voice is so raspy. Can you let us know?
Yes, of course. Before I was elected, I was a frontline activist, protester. I traveled from Ferguson, Missouri with Michael Brown across to DC. And so when I was protesting in McKinney for the little girl who was slammed by the police officer in McKinney, I was protesting there, and they told me protest is not how you get change. They told me if you want to make change, go get elected. And it was kind of a challenge. They didn't expect a black guy with dreadlocks at the time and tattoos to go get elected. But I accepted that challenge. But because I got elected, it didn't stop my passion in my heart for transformative justice. So after George Floyd's death, I've been protesting every night, every day with my community. And so my voice is hoarse and it's gone. And I just left a protest so that I could be here and join you guys on this call. And so I'm all in with my community until we affect real change. I'll continue to protest with them.
Thank you, Lashadion, for taking the moment to join us. And Mitzi, we can return to the scheduled lineup. Thanks so much, Lashadion, for joining us tonight.
Thank you all. Bye now.
Okay, we're back. So I need some help on who's in the waiting room for Roy Woody to have a question real quick. Or I can jump in with Scott Poilis.
I would go with your, who you see is next. I see Chris, let me read the names really quick for you, Mitzi. I see Audrey Spanko, Christian Menifee,
Great.
Jones, Michelle Palmer, Rosenthal, and Garza.
Okay. Roy, are you ready for Rosenthal? Let's run with it.
Yes, I can go with Rosenthal. Yes. How's it going, John Rosenthal? Looks like you're running for re-election for House District 135.
That's right. Hi, Roy.
How you doing? Nice. I like your background with the windmill. But
and solar panels. You see the solar panels.
Exactly, the solar panels. Yeah. I guess my question would be: so in the House, what kind of legislation do you think would address police brutality, or would you like to see to kind of help that be addressed?
Dude, I'm going to come over and give you a big hug, even in COVID, because for that question. So I don't know if y'all know, I'm a freshman Democrat. I defeated a incumbent that had been in this chair for 24 years, a long-term conservative incumbent. I'm the first Democrat ever from this area, and I won that election with a bold, progressive platform. Mm-hmm. And what we had this little debate inside of our team about what would be the first piece of legislation I brought. because you only get to do that once. So in the last session, I brought House Bill 595, which was my very first piece of legislation. What it does is it criminalizes false reports. So like the lady in the park, you know, lying on the phone to seriously try to get a black man killed, she could go to jail for that if this piece of legislation passed. And then if you check on my Facebook and Twitter feeds, it was, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, but I committed in the 87th session to bringing legislation to restrict, to regulate the use of force by police across the state. I think we could have a uniform standard for that across the state, and also to require citizen advisory boards that really have teeth, that have subpoena capability. And so I think also we need to look at qualified immunity, which is basically unqualified immunity. This has been used over and over again to prevent the accountability of people breaking the law when they're supposed to be the ones enforcing it.
That's right.
Until we get to a place where we can routinely, commonplace, hold these people accountable when they step out of line and commit acts of brutality and even murders, we're going to continue with the house on fire. So those are the three pieces of legislation I'm already working on right now.
Good stuff. And then, so you said you're gonna come over and give me a hug with COVID. Speaking of COVID, we saw the House, you know, and the Senate passed, you know, kind of these bills that kind of don't go far enough. And, you know, what do you think could have been done better? What would you like to see, you know, regarding making sure people going, you know, during this pandemic can survive after this pandemic and during this pandemic?
Man, no kidding, right? It's so you know I'm a state legislator. I'm not at the federal level, but if it was me over there, if it was me in Washington, you need to be putting the hands on the money of the people. So they gave $500 freaking billion to corporations, while most of us got $1,200 in the bank to try to figure out if we're going to pay our rent just for 1 month or buy food, right? So definitely continue to extend the unemployment benefit, where that has actually been really helpful to have the extra $600 a week on there. But dude, it needs to be bottom up. Just like most pieces of financial legislation, the place where our federal government goes wrong is trying to bring it from the top down. Democrats do it too. You know, it needs to be bottom up. You need to put that money in the hands of the people. And I think folks start talking about universal basic income, this is the time to play with that. You know what I mean? When people are out of work and people, we do not want to have, I mean, we're our revolution. We do not want to put the people in a position where violent overthrows because they're hungry, you know? So put the money in the hands of the people, and that will help keep their businesses alive too, by the way. You know, they'll have money to spend at restaurants and grocery stores and all that stuff. People are in poverty, they're not spending money, and that's what crashes the economy. You need to empower the people.
Yep. And then I already see your solar panels and your windmill. So what your thoughts on the Green New Deal? And you know, I'm pretty sure you support it.
Well, I want to move that direction for green energy. The reason that I picked this background is because the Texas House Democratic Caucus has named me to a special interim committee on clean air, clean water, and the environment. And I think part of that initiative is to promote the shifting to green energy industry in the state. We really need to drive it happening, not just for the good of the planet, but for the good of our economy. I personally, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I worked in oil and gas for more than 25 years before I left the industry to run for this office. And just for purely selfish reasons, I'd like to work in green energy. And we can do it. The oil industry is contracting, and we can employ those people and cause that revenue, empower green energy industry in our state.
All right, John, thank you so much. And good luck in your race. We're going to move it on to midterm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna jump back in here, and I've got a note that we need to change over to our candidate, Natalia Cornelia. And Roy, I didn't give you more than a second's notice. If you don't have a question ready, I'll just run with one. Natalia Cornelio is running for criminal court in court number 351. And she is here with us, right?
Right. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Oh, hi, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here. So I want to know if you're in the upcoming runoff or if we're going to be supporting you and voting for you in November first off. Tell us about that.
I'm going to be in the November election.
Okay, great, great. Was there any kind of an Our Revolution wave that came to inspire you to step up and run? And what difference do you think you could make in that criminal court, particularly since so many of us are interested in judicial reform?
Absolutely. I've been a lawyer for 14 years, a civil rights lawyer and a lifelong, a career public defender. And so I saw firsthand how our justice system so easily dehumanizes people that it makes decisions about, and it greatly impacts those people's lives and the communities that we're all in. And I think it's critical that our justice system be better at taking into account people's rights and people's human experiences. And so I'm really excited about Our Revolution being here in Texas and the criminal justice campaign platform that we're working on. Our local judges make such a big difference in our justice system. I mean, our judges in criminal courts, like the one I'm running for, sentence thousands of people. They make thousands of bail decisions, and they make a lot of administrative decisions that impact people's accessibility to the court. Right now, we're in an emergency and the courts have shut down, and judges are making the calls on what hearings are essential, what to prioritize, how quickly they're going to take their docket, and how seriously they're going to hear cases. And so I'm committed to due process, to people's rights. I'm really excited to be on the ballot and really excited to be endorsed by Our Revolution. Also, there's no Latinas on our criminal courts in Harris County. We have 38 total. And, we're a pretty Latino population, a Latinx population. And so I'm really excited to try to represent. I've done a lot of work on studying the immigration consequences and intersectionality between immigration laws and criminal justice. And I think we need that. I know we need that on the bench. So thank you for listening. I hope that was less than 3 minutes.
Well, that's great. And, we are interested in what we can do, not only with Medicare for All, but we also know that unfortunately our criminal justice system is housing many people with mental problems. And so we need to find a way to combine what you might be able to do on the bench. And also, I want to give you a moment to speak about the cash bail bond system, whether or not you think we could change that effect and effectively keep people who are not convicted out of the prison system, especially as you mentioned, the COVID and the problems that's having.
I mean, bail reform is crucial for so many reasons. Number one, it's absolutely wrong to have people in jail just because they don't have money. Number two, the racial disparities of our bail system are grotesque. We have 50% of our Harris County jail population today is African American, even though that's disproportionate to the population. I think 19% of the community is African American in Harris County. And there are massive consequences to people being detained while presumed innocent. It's proven that folks that are detained rather than folks that are on bond have more severe sentences, are more likely to be convicted, and in fact, in some cases, will sometimes plead even though they're not guilty just to get out of jail or resolve their cases because being in jail while waiting for a trial is oppressive. As you can imagine, that situation is made so much bigger because of the COVID crisis and the risk of getting sick in jail, the lack of ability to space out. And, it's incumbent upon our leaders to recognize those risks and take them into account in making their decisions and their policies. So I am for bail reform. I worked on the misdemeanor bail lawsuit. I was a plaintiff's lawyer in the felony bail lawsuit that's pending against Harris County right now. And I just take these issues seriously, near and dear. And then the only other issue that's near and dear to me is I truly believe in investing in our communities. As we build out alternatives to incarceration, we really need to invest in infrastructures that will allow us to not rely on incarceration so much. and make sure that we're treating people humanely and allowing them to thrive and build in their own communities.
Okay, thank you for that. That's just awesome, and we thank you. And I also want to just give you a shout out for being Hispanic there. I did not realize there was not another Hispanic judge in Harris County. I'm shocked, but I'm glad you're going to be.
Oh, let me be clear. I misspoke. It was only on the criminal courts, and there are male Latino judges. There's just no women Latino.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So I think what we're going to do next is we're going to move on a little more quickly and maybe just one question per candidate. And so this one would be for Jose Garza. Jose, are you in the house?
I'm so excited to be in the house.
Oh, great. You know, it is just wonderful to have you. And we know that you're running a re-election campaign, so we haven't brought that up. So I want to just share what you're experiencing with COVID, how the people listening right now on this caucus can get out there and help you and other candidates in this runoff election. I think that's critical to your win.
Well, to be clear, in 4 years, I hope to be running a re-election campaign. But right now, I am challenging an incumbent and was incredibly grateful to be the #1 vote getter on election day. And I'm just so grateful to our revolution for helping to create the momentum. I think that's going to carry us across the finish line. And I will just say that, you know, what we know is that our broken criminal justice system has exacerbated the COVID crisis. We know that people of color are more disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And we know that jails have been some of the largest hotspots across the country and across the state. And so our mass incarceration addiction really has made us all less safe. It has disproportionately impacted communities of color. So I am hopeful that a part of the change that will be ushered in is give us the space to rethink our criminal justice policies and to reimagine our criminal justice system and reimagine what it is that really keeps us safe, what public safety is. And we know that at the end of the day, public safety is stability. It's the ability of people to get a job, to support their families. It's not locking up people of color and working class people. And I'm excited to work with all of you to bring that vision to Texas. And Nancy, you're on mute.
Ooh, okay.
I do want to throw, I've been looking at the chat. Some people are asking for websites. If you go to ourrevolutiontx.com, you will see a section called 2020 Endorsed Candidates. You can find all of these candidates' information. So please go there, and I'll hand it back to Mitzi.
Okay, great. I'm going to jump on right over. I think we've got Audrey Spanko, and you're going to see her shortly. I am so proud. She is in my neck of the woods, which is East Texas, and Audrey brings some special background to the talent and the reason she's running. Audrey, we've talked about COVID. We've talked about current events and the criminal justice. I want to bring you to your experience as a licensed social worker and in the healthcare and what you might be able to do as a candidate once elected.
Thank you, Mitzi, and thank you, everybody. This has been awesome. I can't wait to go back and watch the recording from earlier. I heard that it was phenomenal. So thank you all for having us. As Mitzi mentioned, I am a candidate running for Texas State Senate District 1 as a licensed social worker. So I've been practicing social work in Texas for about 10 years, primarily in medical field, but also in prevention. And I fall in line most definitely with our revolution as it relates to healthcare. I remember being in graduate school, sitting with a couple of class members, some of whom I might find on the line tonight, talking about how do we improve criminal justice or make criminal justice reform? How do we improve the lives of Texans? How do we reduce poverty? How do we increase housing? How do we make change? And every conversation we had all came back to Medicare for All and making sure that folks have access to medical care, along with several other things, but it is definitely a foundational piece of our campaign. In Senate District 1, we have 16 counties, a little over 800,000 people, and close to 40,000 of them were uninsured pre-COVID. So we know that those numbers are only going to increase as we saw our unemployment rates increase, and so many folks lose their health insurance when they lost their employment. So we need to be doing everything that we can to be bringing health insurance, not only to our metro and rural or urban areas, but also to our rural areas where healthcare is really, really important and valuable when we are sending folks 30 miles up the road to the closest hospital, and every minute counts in life-threatening concerns and instances. So we've got a lot that Medicaid expansion, Medicare for All would really do to improve the lives of East Texans and Texas, as a general and as a whole, as a country. We all need to be able to have that right for health insurance. So without a doubt, definitely support Medicare for All and all that it could do for our district, but for Texas as well. And then just as a social worker, I've seen such a need for change with the families and individuals that I've worked with that we are fighting for every day of this campaign, and we'll fight hard for once elected.
Well, Audrey, and I also want to give you a shout out because you are one of our endorsed candidates, but you're also representing a lot of rural Texas. And so that's really important. Roy, I'm going to pass this back to you for our next candidate.
All righty. Is Christian on the line? Christian Murphy?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. Looks like you're running for the Harris County Attorney.
Yes.
Y'all tell me about your race so far.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you all very, very much for your support. I'm Christian D. Menifee, run for Harris County Attorney. I've been getting a bunch of texts and emails about, the George Floyd shooting and how the county attorney out there is prosecuting the case. Unfortunately, in the state of Texas, things are broken up with a district attorney who prosecutes the crimes and a county attorney here in Harris County that handles all the civil matters. So this is the chief civil legal officer for Harris County, which, as many of you know, is more populous in 25 states. With your all support, in the primary election, I challenged an establishment Democrat who was a 12-year incumbent, and there was one other person in the race, and we were able to win without a runoff. So it was, an incredible moment. If elected in November, I will not only be the first African-American, but the youngest county attorney in the 180-something year history of the office. So we're extremely excited, one, to not have a runoff, but two, to have the support of our revolution and to continue to push a progressive campaign.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, man. Thank you for that. I think we're moving on.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate that. And then so if you want, I guess one thing, how has the George Floyd case affected you?
So, I got into the political arena because of police brutality. So my wife and I both went to law school in St. Louis, and she was out there when Michael Brown was shot, and she was pulled over in her neighborhood when wearing a hoodie and had a gun pointed at her face. I've been arrested since I've been out here in Houston for absolutely no reason and set out on the curb so that people walking by could see me in cuffs. This was a very important thing to us to get involved. And so for the county attorney's office, we have the bail reform lawsuit out here. The current county attorney pushed some really ridiculous positions in that lawsuit. I'm going to move the office to the left, get us on the right side of bail reform, but also we represent the constables and the jailers whenever they're sued by people for violations of constitutional rights. So, one of the things you'll hear people talk about is ending qualified immunity. Well, now our county is going to have a lawyer representing those folks who's going to consider the greater justice implications of the legal positions we take instead of just saying things is a dollars and cents thing. So super excited, going to make the office incredibly progressive and bring some real change to Harris County.
All righty. Thank you so much, and good luck in your race.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mitzi?
Okay, I'm going to take it back, and who I'm looking for is F.J. Jones for Brazoria, Justice of the Peace. And this is a question that just came to us, and it's, I wonder if there is anything in your role of Justice of the Peace that may cross over with immigration, with what is going on with immigration. Do any of those things come through the Justice of the Peace Court? That's what we want to know.
The JP deals with small claims court, eviction court, truancy and traffic court. So I'm quite sure that there may be some concerns with immigration. One case that comes to mind is that I was in the courtroom watching the current incumbent preside over a case, and there was no one in her staff who was able to speak the language of the parent. So it knocked the parent out of, because the person on trial was a 17-year-old young man, and it was her son. So it knocked her out of being able to advocate for her son. And so one of the pledges that I have that's on my platform for Justice of the Peace is making sure that we have staff members who are capable of serving all of the community as inclusively as possible. So that's the closest I can come right now to immigration.
Right. And is it correct that we can go to the Our Revolution Texas website and find out more about you and what you're doing and how we can connect with you about your campaign as it goes forward?
Absolutely. I am a nationally endorsed Our Revolution candidate. I want to say thank you so much. I also want to thank all of the progressives for their work during this convention, especially those on the platform committee. I heard that was quite the doozy. So congratulations to you guys out there. And just know that you have my complete support. And I appreciate all of the support because I'm originally from New Jersey, despite the fact that I live in Texas now. And I even got some shout outs from New Jersey, Our Revolution folks, for the work that we're doing down here in Texas. So thank you.
Great. Well, we're inspired that you did what we want people to do in Texas, and that is to step up at the grassroots to run and make a difference in their community. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for connecting with us and going through the process to be an endorsed candidate. I have heard that Mike Siegel is on the line. If we could bring him up, I want to touch base with Mike Siegel about current events.
Thank you so much, Mitzi. Glad I can make it back. How are you doing?
Right. Mike, I'm doing good. And it's been brought to my attention that you may have personal reasons as well as professional reasons as a candidate for what is going on with the George Floyd situation there, and maybe some difficult conversations you're having. And we just want to give you an opportunity to be real and how we can support you as a candidate.
Right on. Do you want to say more about the personal reasons? Or are you referring to some things I've said publicly?
Well, no, it was actually, that was a question put to me. If that's not a good one, and we can jump right back into, I know you're really active with Our Revolution, and we're just thrilled you're here.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You know, and I won't take too much of your time. I know folks have been on this call for a long time, but big picture, I'm super excited to be with you. Our Revolution has been basically the foundation of my political career, as brief as it's been here in Texas. Our Revolution Harris County was the first organization to endorse me in 2018. And now I'm running a hard progressive campaign fighting for Medicare for all, Green New Deal, criminal justice reform in what's a national battleground district, and have the chance to win in November. And we're uniting Our Revolution folks from Austin to Houston, everywhere in between. So I have a wonderful chance to win, and really a lot of that's owed to Our Revolution. So thank you all so much. So what I will say about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and this moment that we're in is that we need to take strong action. We cannot half-step. We cannot try to cave it all to Donald Trump's attempt to label every single person who's protesting as a terrorist. He thinks that we're all terrorists because we don't want fascism. And so this is our moment to stand up and speak out, because being in the middle is a terrible place to be right now. We need to be on the side of the struggle for Black lives. And a story I did tell recently was because, you know, George Floyd was killed because someone reported a counterfeit $20 bill. And that's a property crime, right? That someone was basically strangled to death because they tried to buy some food with what might have been a fake bill. And some of you know I have a mixed race family. My wife is from Nigeria. I have two beautiful children, 8 and 4 years old. And my 8-year-old daughter is a Girl Scout. And turns out when we went to deposit the money she earned selling cookies, that we had this bill here. And I'm gonna hold it up. It looks real, right? It looks real. Yes. If you look really close, it says Motion Picture Association or something. But she was paid with this bill, 8-year-old Black girl. And so what distinguishes my daughter from George Lopez? Well, I guess if she had tried to pay with this bill, she's too young to be a threat, maybe, is what we tell ourselves, right? But if she was 12, would it be different? If she was 13, would it be different? And so we live in a country where racist police are allowed to keep their jobs day in, day out. This guy who killed George Floyd had how many complaints, had already killed people, I believe. And this is across the country. I'm originally from Oakland, California, where Oscar Grant was killed by racist police on the train line there. I heard New Jersey reference. I mean, across the country, there's one of these stories wherever you live. Right here in Austin, Mike Ramos killed by police officers without cause, most likely for racist reasons. And so we have to dismantle white supremacy, right? we have to take it head on. We have to take on the Jim Crow that exists here in Texas. You know, we are in this moment where we have 400 years of racial oppression compounded with a health pandemic, compounded with an economic crisis bordering on a depression, compounded by a hateful and divisive president. And organizing is the way we need to fight back. And so my commitment is to be a voice for y'all, to be a voice for the people in this district. The Texas 10th, which is the district where Sandra Bland died at Prairie View a few years ago after being unconstitutionally profiled and arrested, where Rodney Reed from Bastrop County is still on Texas death row decades later for a crime he did not commit, that was most likely committed by a white former police officer who had friends in law enforcement. And so these problems are entrenched and we need to face them head on. And so to me, whether we're talking about the economic crisis, you're talking about racism against Black people or against Chinese people right now, whether you're talking about the collapse of our healthcare system, we need bold progressive solutions. So what's the solution?
Our revolution. We thank you for that. You jumped right in and really answered what we wanted. You know, the personal story you had about how it's relating to your life and family, and we want you to win the 10th congressional district race. And thank you for being our revolution candidate. I'm going to turn this back over to Roy. It's your turn, Roy.
Yes. Is Tiaiva on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you doing? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. So you're running for the 339th Criminal District Court. All right.
Yes.
All right. And then, tell me about that, about your race and your run.
I am running for 339th Criminal District Court. It's a felony district court in Harris County, so they handle everything from low-level possession of a controlled substance to capital murder cases. I'm currently a public defender. I've been practicing for about 15 years. And being in the job, I've seen the best and I've seen the worst of our system. I've seen how it impacts minorities. I've seen how it impacts people that just don't have the financial resources. And that shouldn't be the determinant factor as to how the rest of your life shapes out. If you have a felony, you have to deal with that for the rest of your life. And it severely undercuts all of the other opportunities that you'll have. And all too often we find are Black and brown and poor people in a position where they get saddled with that when there were other options and sometimes that they couldn't afford. It's time to make a move in our criminal justice system and stop just talking about criminal justice reform and doing something about criminal justice reform. And that's why I'm running. There are programs that we can implement. There are mentorships that we can get for our young people that really make a difference. We need to be on the track where we're actually using that as an opportunity. I can't stop the police from dragging them in for nothing. I can't stop the police from the brutality that's being implemented on some of the young people. I can't stop them from over-policing. But if you bring them into my courtroom, I can use that as an opportunity to get them on a path that is geared towards a trade school or college or a future. And I think we need to focus on that. What we're doing now doesn't work. So it's all about stepping up and being the change you want to see, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. One of the issues that we see is that a lot of times the jails are used as a mental health institution. What are your thoughts on that?
There are two ways that. First, we need to actually utilize more community-based programs. There are mental health programs in our communities that we don't use. In Harris County, we use the same programs that are overfunded but under-resourced. You have a waiting period because they only have a certain number of beds, while you have proven programs in the community that we're not using. We need to use more resources. We also need to look towards allocating more resources to victims of crime. As a public defender, one of the things I see is when we get in the room and we're talking about what happened, we go to trauma. And sometimes people go through things as children and they're victims of crime and they don't get the help. What happens when you make too much for public health assistance, but you don't make enough to get it on your own? You deal with it on your own and you end up in my office as a public defender. Why don't we allocate resources when we see the problem? If everybody in the courtroom knows that this kid is going to have a problem because what they endured and they're not going to be able to handle it alone, why isn't it the condition of probation that you pay for his counseling? We don't do that, and we need to. We need to allocate more money towards mental health in order to not make it a diagnosis spot before you send them to TDC, but make it a diagnosis spot if it has to be that actually gets them on a track towards health.
Good. Yeah, I agree with that. That's awesome. And then I guess last question for you. How has the George Floyd case, well, not case, but situation involved you? Sorry about that.
Just great.
If I may, can you hear me jump in?
Mm-hmm.
I think what I want to do, there's a little video difficulty going on, and I want to jump in here. I think we've got one more candidate we haven't heard from, and we're just running overtime, so I'm just going to see if I can move the group on. Is that okay? And we'll get back in score. Is that all right? Okay. What I want to check on and see if Scott Fuelis is in the house. He is our candidate.
I am in the house.
Right. Scott, I understand that you are a candidate there in Brazoria County, Drainage District 4, Place 2. And just really briefly, I'll throw this a little bit of a curveball at you because this question came to us through the audience that we've had today. Okay. What about unity in the party? Can you speak to that? Many of us are disappointed from 2016 and 2020, and I might be one of them, but I am going to do everything I can to make sure that Trump is not reelected. And what can you do in your race at the grassroots level or working with us in our revolution to help us get beyond that bridge for success?
Okay, that's a great question. So I can address it both ways. Within the party itself, I can tell you from my experience working on the platform, that we don't really have that much that divides us on issues. Every single one of those things that we won on the platform, we did it with support from Biden delegates. I kid you not. Every one of those things, we had at least a couple of them voting with us. And it wasn't really ideological difference at all that divided us. It was just strategy, like how do you win an election, that kind of thing. And, you know, we were right and they were wrong, but that's okay. Now in my race, I'm running to make sure that we have Democrats up and down the ballot. Okay. Because we have an opportunity to win this race. And I didn't see anybody jumping in as a Democrat, that was going to have a D next to their name, that was going to grab this thing. So I need to be there so that I can pull people down that ballot. You know, anybody that knows me and wants to vote for me has to go through their state legislator race, their DA, their county attorney, you know, all those important judge seats, you know, that are going to help us with criminal justice reform, justice of the peace. FJ Jones is going to be right above me on the ballot. So, you know, we've got to help out each other. So this is all about unity. It really is. I never would have made it onto the platform committee if everyone in my district hadn't realized that was what I was trying to do.
Well, I am just insanely proud of the progress you made on that committee. I mean, I have to tell you, that just made my day, all the struggles that we've been going through. And
just a 13-hour meeting with a 1 5-minute break, no big deal.
I appreciate it. We've got a little bit more in the program, and Roy, I think you're going to come back and talk to us real quick about volunteers, and that's what's going to help Scott and others win his campaign.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you can, you know, all these candidates, they're again on the website, ourrevolutiontexas.com. Go check them out. Do what you can, you know, phone bank. You know, if you can donate money, but your time is really important. You know, right now I'm doing postcards for Mike Siegel. So I'm doing my 50 to trying to get to 100. We'll see, but they're due Saturday. But, you know, things like that, anything, you know, right now, I guess I guess some people may be block walking, but if not, you know, jump on those phone lines, and then, you know, if people are texting, text. So, yeah.
How do they find us, Roy?
And then, yeah, ourrevolutiontexas.com.
Okay. And we have dozens or hundreds of Facebook pages across Texas. So there's just lots of ways you can stay tuned with us, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay. We are just almost done, and I'm so grateful whoever's here, but it is just really important to me to speak out to why we want you here to be a member of our revolution. We have access to assets that nobody else has. We have the energy and the tech tools that were used in Bernie's 2016 campaign. Some of those very same people are still working with us. As we went across Texas, we were the first state in the nation to launch our revolution. They're proud of us, and we're proud of the work we're doing together with your help. But why do we need money? Because we have a lot of education to do in Texas, and we have paid organizers here in Texas. We don't give the money away out of house, but we really need you to do that. At the bottom of your screen, you can see that all you have to do is go to Our Revolution TX/membership. And there's a link there, and there will also be a link if you go to the Our Revolution Texas Facebook page for you to find a way to join. And that is truly a way we can be stronger together, because our next caucus next year is going to be even bigger and better than this one. So that is what I have to say. Do we want Kristi, Lara to come back in and give us our great end shout out, or do y'all want me to do it? We can just go for it.
We also need to we have one more candidate that we need to give a little bit of time to, just a little bit, before we sign off. But Clayton Tucker.
Y'all are like for real forgetting me. I'm gonna start texting to me like, that's cold.
Just a little bit of time. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So, let's keep this brief, y'all. I mean, so thank y'all for hanging in here. I know this has been a really long call. So I am a candidate. I'm running for SD24. It starts up in Abilene, not all of it. Runs down to Killeen, Austin, and Kerrville. Just running a very solid progressive campaign and just doing what I can to really build the movement, because that's what's important, is building movement for Medicare for all, for a Green New Deal, and having like these really bold conversations where we're not just talking about Medicaid expansion. It drives me nuts when a Democrat says talk about Medicaid expansion like it's a big, bold idea. No, Medicaid expansion is not a big, bold idea. But Medicare for all is, and that's what we're going to be continue pushing for. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of y'all to continue building the movement. And you can learn about all of our candidates, switching over back to my Our Revolution hat, by going to ourrevolutiontx.com, find our 2020 endorsed candidates, and I think it is time for us. Just remind y'all to be safe. We still have a pandemic going around. Wear a mask. So if you're out showing solidarity with George Floyd, please continue wearing a mask. We have to continue being bold. And of course, this is Texas, so we have to continue being revolutionary. And Kristi, do you want to lead us off in one of our little chants?
I always say progressives are pretty tough. And I think the over 100 attendees that are still with us at a record-breaking call shows how tough you are, how dedicated you are to the movement. So we want to thank every single one of you that is dedicated to changing not just Texas, but the nation. Very special thank you to all of our guest panelists, our candidates, our electeds. This was an amazing digital caucus, y'all. And we can only grow and get better from here. And we're going to close out the call with our favorite chants. So if those on the panelists could unmute your mics. And for those on the call, even if you're home by yourself, it's good to give yourself a little bit of spiritual, we gotta revive ourselves. We gotta keep ourselves motivated and empowered. So what we say in Our Revolution is, when we organize,
we win.
When we organize,
we win.
Whose revolution?
Our revolution.
Whose revolution?
Our revolution.
All right, I'm going to see y'all July 29th for the runoff primary elections. We're going to take those elections for our progressive candidates, and I'm going to see you guys in November. Have a good one, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates.